Talking Democracy. I'm the host, Mark Bannister, and today we have Secretary of State Chris Biggs here with us. Chris, we were talking about the roles of the Secretary of State, and it sounds like there's really quite a diverse set of duties. One of the issues that appears to be coming out during this election is this an administrative type of a position, or is this a policy position? How would you address that?
Well, I think at one level it's a combination of both. I think that the Secretary of State in a certain way can set a tone, but it's our job to carry out the laws that are passed by the legislature. And I know there's been a lot of conversation about what the Secretary of State's office would or should look like. And it's my belief that there's a very good reason why the Secretary of State's office is an administrative office in carrying out the elections. And even though I've been a prosecutor for a lot of years, I would be very concerned about changing the role of the agency and turning it into a law enforcement agency with a very strong prosecutorial function, because I believe we need to have separation of powers. And the way it is right now, we have the various prosecutors in the individual counties that have authorities to take actions. They can ask for the assistance of the Attorney General. But I would be very concerned about consolidating too much power in one particular office and turning the Secretary of State's office into a law enforcement agency. I think there's a certain risk in having the agency that's trying to run the elections also carry on a very strong enforcement mode, particularly if that's tied to a political agenda.
Your opponent is Chris Kobach. How would you distinguish yourself and Mr. Kobach on these issues?
Well, first of all, I would say I'm committed to the duties of the office and also to being here in Kansas and performing the duties of the office. My opponent has an interest in a national issue, which is immigration, and that's fine. That's where his heart is. But that has nothing to do with the duties of the Secretary of State's office. And to a certain extent, I think there's been an attempt to try to make this race somehow a referendum on immigration issues or something like that, when in reality those issues don't have anything to do with the duties and functions of the Secretary of State's office.
So are there some ethical questions about trying to frame the race in this manner?
Well, I don't know about the ethics of it. I mean, the reality is in politics, there's often an appeal to people's emotions in an election year in an attempt to have people vote a particular way. And I think there's been an effort to try to connect people's concerns about immigration somehow in a circuitous way to elections, so that to me it's very much like screaming fire in a crowded theater, only here the goal is instead of people rushing for the exits, they'll somehow go to the polls out of fear and emotion and vote a particular way. But in reality, those issues, those national issues, that whole issue of immigration, handling that, which is where his interest and heart lies, doesn't have anything to do with this office. And I don't know that we should have our state being embroiled in a national debate with our Secretary of State being involved in some very controversial matters around the country when it doesn't address the issues and the very specific statutory functions of this office. I don't know that that's a light we want to be in. We've had a history in this state of having people who have a very specific ideology who have drawn national attention. Phil Klein was one, Fred Phelps was one in a different way, and to a certain extent, Mr. Kobach has become very much a lightning rod. And I don't know that that's an intention we need to bring to the state, particularly in this office, because it doesn't have anything to do with those issues.
Okay. What issues are at, I guess, the top of your agenda for this office?
Well, I'm very much concerned about the office being accessible to the public. I think Ron Thornburg did a very good job, and he's very well respected by both parties for the job that he did. And that having been said, anytime you have a new set of eyes that comes in after a period of time, there's an opportunity. And I have no agenda other than to make the office the best it could be. And I talked to the staff in the office and said, I want you to speak freely about what we can do. And I also had ideas that we needed to update our website. I think we launched our new website today. And my experience was in looking at the website that for people who dealt with it, it was very manageable and helpful. But for people who had not been to it before, I didn't believe it was very user-friendly. And so we've done a lot to update the website. The campaign financing requirements where statewide candidates have to file online, and we give local candidates that choice. It was not very user-friendly. The fields were very complicated. It took a long time to do. And I believe that people should be able to participate in democracy as candidates. We shouldn't create a scenario where to be a candidate you have to have a computer expert or somebody to do that. And we want to make the process available. I want us to be transparent. I want us to be efficient. I want us to be consumer friendly to serve the people of Kansas. And I also want to make sure we have an attitude where we listen to people about how we can better serve.
Can you have a role in exposing transparency of state government generally?
We have there are communications that take place with other agencies, and we have a coordinated effort with our web provider for all the state agencies, and there's going to be an effort to coordinate that. We have had some issues because it's been very difficult for our agency to get election bills through the legislature because there's been a concern that they would become very politicized. We have a number of statutes that are on the books right now that we've been unable to change that, quite frankly, we don't follow anymore because they've been preempted by federal rules or federal laws and regulations. And we'd also like to have the opportunity to streamline our business forms. But we have a number of statutes that require that we collect different things for different kinds of business entities, so we aren't going to be able to have that opportunity absent getting some changes.
So how would you describe your ability to work with the legislature?
Well, I think it's very good. I mean, the second day on the job, literally, I was over in the legislature discussing a bill that dealt with our duty to audit cemetery trust funds. And what we did in that bill was we were able to get authority to work out equitable resolutions with cemetery trust funds that had the amount of their assets had become too small under the statute. Mm-hmm. They're required to keep enough assets to make sure they can honor their prepaid contracts. And there were basically three categories. One is they didn't have enough money in their trust because of the downturn in the economy, and the value of that trust had shrunk of no fault of their own. We also had situations where they had unlawfully taken funds out in violation of statute of certain funds. And then we had some situations. We had one recently in Hutchinson. Our office had exposed that was turned over for prosecution involved in outright theft. So we wanted to have the ability to work equitably with the ones that had problems of no fault of their own, because before our only choice was to do nothing or turn it over to have it be put in receivership. So we were able to get part of what we wanted through the legislature. So I feel like I have a good working relationship. I've already talked to some of the leaders, at least in the last session, to see if there was a way that we could get an elections bill that had the blessing to just fix some of these things that needed to be corrected.